Hello, Dr. Dudash.
Hi.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions about the race relations in Springfield relating to Ferguson and St. Louis.
Okay.
How do you think the particular riots in Ferguson affect, if at all, local Springfield?
Well, the riots in Ferguson affect us on a national level, and in that sense, it sends a strong signal to the United States citizenry about the state of race relations, which is to say that race is in fact still a problem. I think we have become very comfortable with the idea that, well, we elected a president of a different ethnicity and a different skin color, so therefore everything's getting better. And Ferguson sends a strong signal that that's simply not the case. For Springfieldians, it sends a signal about the state of the state, if you want to look at it that way. That here in Springfield, it is possible that if we had a similar situation, a race problem between anybody, that we, would have to question what our government would do to protect us and really think about what the impact of that might be. So it may have frozen speech a little bit across the state, if not across the United States.
Okay. What is the biggest fear for Springfield if tension did spread throughout our community?
I think the biggest fear for us would be that Springfield as a city seems to be divided regionally. There's the north side and the south side, and that's the battle that would probably be fought, and that's not a fair division. There's also a big difference in class more than there is a difference in race here in Springfield, and part of that has to do with Springfield's incredibly sensitive history when it comes to race relations. And so I think the biggest fear for us should be, what would the dividing line look like and where would it take place? Because Springfield's so spread out, there's not really a concentrated area where people gather to say, to have a riot. We don't have the space. And so I would assume that the very, very tiny downtown areas, of which there are two, of course, would probably be in the biggest trouble. And I don't know what the people who live there would do, or what kind of protection they could expect to have, considering the fact that the history of Springfield is relatively recent, honestly, when it comes to poor race relations. And I think we still feel some of that. So if anything, the impact could feel like it's bigger, because Springfield's a smaller city with a bigger problem than even St. Louis. But that dividing line of St. Louis and East St. Louis is, pretty clear, and the dividing line between North and South Springfield is pretty clear. So I think that would be the fear, that we wouldn't know where it would go.
Okay. Do you think the events of Ferguson have a domino effect on the students of Springfield themselves?
I don't know how much the students are paying attention, because it didn't happen on a university campus, and so they tend to not relate to the bigger cities. It's easy to say, oh, well, that's a big city, that's why things like that happen there. Whereas Springfield, even though it might feel like a city to some people who came from the smaller towns in Missouri, those of us who have been to St. Louis or Kansas City know that it's just simply not the same. And that's a majority of our students, honestly, who have at least been to those places and know the difference between Springfield and the other cities. Missouri as a state is the #1 state for the greatest number of communities under populations of 2,000. And that's something that not a lot of people realize, which means that Springfield, as the third largest city, only has 250,000, 275,000, somewhere in there, in what is essentially a 100-mile block area. And so it's difficult for them to relate to what happened to Ferguson. And certainly it's difficult when you're on a college campus and you're being taught about race relations and critically thinking about things. And you don't want to think about things like the government coming in and gassing you or shooting you or turning on you when you are a citizen. And actually, this is probably something that will come up in our social movements classes